Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to What Women Want with Judy Goss, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in once again to What Women Want Talk Radio. Before we begin our show today, all of us at What Women Want Talk Radio would like to extend our condolences and sympathies to all of those impacted by the tragedy in Las Vegas. I am your host, Kristin West, and Judy Goss is in Atlanta today. Do you have a special song? Perhaps it's the song that was playing when you had your first kiss. Many of our most important moments in life have their own soundtrack, and we're going to be welcoming songwriting legend Steve Dorff on in just a few minutes to discuss his life in songwriting. But first, I want to thank you, our listeners. We've been on for over 3 years, and we've hit over 800,000 downloads. If you haven't subscribed to us, please do so on iTunes or visit our archives on LA Talk Radio's website, latalkradio.com. Many of our latest episodes are also now available on YouTube as well. Just type in Judy Goss. Need an afternoon to revamp some part of your life? We have topical playlists on communication, finance, and much more. You know, week after week, Judy and I have amazing conversations, and we always say that we need more time with our suburb guests. So comment on our YouTube videos and on our Facebook and our Twitter, and let's keep these great dialogues going. And I can't say enough about Judy Goss. Besides being one of the hosts of this awesome radio show, she's a TV host and a regular contributor on NBC and Fox. Judy is in Atlanta right now getting ready to welcome you all for the Spirit of Women Conference this weekend. And ladies, the event of the year is upon us. Not the Met Ball, not the Oscars, not the White House Correspondents' Dinner. It's the Spirit of Women Conference. If you still haven't gotten your ticket, today is the day. Tickets are only $149 for a day and a half of education and inspiration from top industry leaders. And 10% of all tickets sold from here on out goes to Habitat for Humanity, who's also going to be sending someone to speak on behalf of the charity. So get your tickets. They are flying out the door. Visit spiritofwomenconference.com. Judy founded the company What Women Want Networking 6 years ago, and now she's hosting the first national conference. So make history with me and Judy this weekend. Get yourself to Atlanta, ladies. So here's a little about me. I'm an award-winning actress, screenwriter, and producer. A script I co-wrote, Likeness, has also been nominated for a screenwriting award at this year's Fantastic Horror Film Festival in San Diego. I can also be seen in the upcoming films The Spirit Room, Hell's Kitty, and The Lich, all due out later this year. Tonight we have a special guest. All of our guests are special, but we have a mega success in music. Steve Dorff is a Grammy-nominated songwriter with a long line of hits to his credit, including Kenny Rogers' Through the Years, and most recently, Garth Brooks' Baby, Let's Lay Down and Dance. An industry stalwart with a career spanning 4 decades, Dorff is the recipient of more than 40 BMI awards and 11 Billboard awards, and he lives in Los Angeles. His memoir, I Wrote That One Too, A Life in Songwriting from Willie to Whitney, co-written with Colette Friedman, is being released on November 1st. Steve, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Kristin. It's really nice to be here.
I am so excited and thrilled to have you here and to discuss your long life in music. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us. We're really honored to have you. What age did you discover your talent in music?
Wow, what age? My mother tells me I I came out of the womb singing, but instead of screaming. I remember hearing music in my head as far back as I can remember, 2-3 years old. I had this this thing. It's I'm trying to remember the name of it now. I'm blanking. It's a thing, a cross wiring of the senses, where I would visualize music. When I would hear sounds, I would close my eyes and see these plasma bubbles. Is the best way I can describe it.
Like synesthesia?
There it is, synesthesia. Thank you.
Wow.
I totally blanked, and I just assumed everybody had that, So I would ask people, hey, how did friends, when I was 5, 6 years old, hey, how did you hear that? And they'd look at me like I was from outer space. My mother thought I was from outer space, but I always heard music from the time I was very little, and would always hear this orchestra in my head and would musicalize everything I looked at or experienced.
That's so amazing, this idea that you would actually experience music in such a vibrant way. Did anybody else in your family have this, or were musical? Did you have a parent that played an instrument, or a grandparent?
No, not really. No, I was... no, I mean, my mom picked at the piano a little bit. She could play like 1 or 2 songs, and my sister took piano lessons. She was 10 years older than me. And but nothing like what I was experiencing.
Did you start your musical life playing the piano?
Yes.
How old were you when you started playing?
4, 5.
Wow.
I'd listen to what my sister was practicing for 6 hours a day, and I'd crawl up on the bench and play better than she could, and that caused a lot of problems. She tried to break all my fingers and my arms, and not really, but
little sibling rivalry there.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Now, you went to college to become a veterinarian, though.
I did.
What got you back on the path to music?
Well, my parents, that generation, music was a good hobby, but not anything you could make a living at. And my dad really would drum that into me, all the time. And you have to be a doctor or a lawyer, and so I did promise to go to college if I could get in, and I did get in, and started out trying to do the veterinary medicine thing because I loved animals, and that didn't last too long. I found a piano on campus and started writing songs, and that that pretty much was my path.
Wow. Now, you also work for a major music publisher in Atlanta, is that right?
Yeah, I first signed with the Lowry Music Group. They were pretty much the only game in town at the time in Atlanta. And I would drive from Athens to Atlanta, cut school, go in the studio, play songs, and they signed me, and I think they were paying me $65 a week. It was great. I mean, I was in college. I was making a little money and cutting classes, and that was pretty much the beginning of the journey.
That's amazing. At what point did you tell your parents, I'm not going to be a veterinarian anymore?
Well, they knew because I flunked out of chemistry. I think in the first trimester. I went into the journalism school because I liked being at college. They had a great football team, lots of great-looking women, and no math or chemistry. So I was, I was happy and had friends, and I think my parents knew that's what I was going to do. It was just a matter of how,
Well, that's amazing. It's amazing that you followed your ultimate goal in the end. So many people as we were discussing before the show, get redirected into something that's not right for them, doesn't fit them. So let's fast forward to today. How many songs are in your discography?
Oh, God. I've probably written 2,000-3,000 songs.
Wow.
I've had 400 recorded, a little over 400 recorded by a diverse cross-section of artists, and I've been very blessed. It's been, it's a lot of being lucky and a lot of being good and a lot of being at the right place at the right time.
So let me get this straight. You've had 400 songs recorded. You have more that have not been recorded. So hypothetically, we could listen to a song of yours per day and still not listen to everything that's been recorded.
True.
That's amazing.
Well, I kind of liken a songwriter's catalog as an iceberg.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at an iceberg, you're only looking at 10 to 15% of it is above water. The rest of it is underwater, and you never see it. And I think songwriters' catalogs are pretty much the same way. I think if you get to hear 10 or 15% of what a writer creates, that's pretty good.
So let me ask, how are you so prolific? Are you struck in the moment? Is it a eureka moment and then you grab the nearest napkin? Do you have a disciplined process? How do you get to writing that volume of material?
Well, to answer your first question, I think it's not so much a process as inspiration. Yeah, it does hit you at different times. I'll still hear something that may not even be musical, and all of a sudden it'll spur either a musical thought or a lyrical thought, and before you know it, there's a blank piece of paper, and then there's all of a sudden a 3.5-minute song. That's
amazing. You've worked with some outstanding vocalists, and just to rattle off a few: George Strait, Celine Dion. Do you ever write with a vocalist in mind when you write something?
That's a very frequently asked question. Most of the time for me, I would say 98% of the time, no. I just try to write a really good song and then pray that somebody wants to do it. But it's funny you ask, because just yesterday I got asked to write a song for a specific artist, and I've been kind of working on it all day. And it is a different process, because when I have that voice in mind and I have that artist in mind visually, it takes me to a different place musically. I'll somehow channel in maybe what their past hits were, or I know what they sound like, and what they gravitate to musically. So it's a little bit of a different process. When I'm just writing a song because I think, hey, this is a really cool idea, I just write the song, and like I said, pray that somebody wants to record it,
Well, it sounds like your prayers have been answered several times.
Several times, yeah.
Does the music come first? Does the melody come first? Or does the lyric come first? Or is it all over the place?
All over the place, all different ways. Depends on who I'm collaborating with. I collaborate about 85% of the time, and mostly with very strong lyricists, because I'm more the music guy. And depending on who that collaborator is, either there'll be a title, or there'll be a verse or a chorus of a lyric already written. Sometimes I'll have a piece of music and I'll play it, and they'll go, and they'll come up with words to that. So it's all different. When I'm writing by myself, it's usually music first.
Interesting. Do you have a favorite collaboration? I'm sure you have so many to choose from.
It's in the book, and,
okay.
and I talk about my collaborators, and I've been so blessed to have worked with so many great songwriters, and but I have what I call my big four, and it's what I've had most of my success with. Milton Brown, who's probably the greatest lyricist that nobody's heard of. He lives in Mobile, Alabama, and we've been writing together since my Atlanta days. Eric Kaz, who's a great songwriter who lives out here, and Eric and I have written a bunch of hits together. Marty Panzer, who you would know him from all the Barry Manilow songs that he wrote with Barry, and Marty and I started writing together and wrote through the years together, and many other songs that have been recorded. And then John Bettis, who I've been working with mostly on television themes and movie songs and theater now. And so those are the four that I've collaborated with most. They're kind of my go-to people. But I've written a lot of great songs with a lot of other, one-time writers, where I'll get with them and we'll write this magical little song and maybe never write another one.
It's amazing. And I know we were talking earlier before the show about how important it was in entertainment. There's what people think entertainment is and what the reality of entertainment is. And it's amazing that you've developed this amazing group of collaborators over the years, and you have people that you can rely upon to work with and create these great products that you're creating. I want to pivot to the Hollywood and the music industry life. I think a lot, like I said, I think a lot of people have ideas of what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a sort of reality. And I know that many parents in entertainment have mixed feelings when their children pursue entertainment. Your son Steven is a successful actor.
Mm-hmm.
Your son Andrew was also a successful songwriter before he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
Given your stature in the music world, did that impact the way you raised your kids?
Not really. I mean, they were always around it.
Mm-hmm.
They knew that even as young kids, they knew that's what I did. I sat at the piano and wrote songs, and they probably thought, "Gee, my dad doesn't work. I don't know what he does." But I was I was a dad first. I coached Little League. I very involved in their school, very involved in every aspect of their life as a dad. And I have two daughters, and it's pretty much the same. The fact that they're all very creative and all have gravitated to show business, I suppose, is because they've been exposed to it their whole life, and so it's not surprising to me. But it's interesting to look at that, and because if you're a doctor, your kids sometimes end up being doctors, or if you're a pharmacist, your kids end up being a pharmacist. So I think that's pretty prevalent.
It's true. People, businesses sort of run in families too. I've talked to a lot of people who have had family businesses, and then father's a carpenter, son's a carpenter. It's always a unique, I think, experience for a family that's in entertainment, because you are also, not only are you a family, you're a family that's also in the public eye, and
right,
for better or worse. And have you written any songs that were inspired by your kids?
Oh yeah. I think every song I've ever written comes from a personal place, inspired from something I've experienced in life, whether it's a heartbreak or being in love, or I've written several songs for my kids, about them. A song that Kenny Rogers recorded called "I Want a Son" is one of my favorite things that Marty Panzer and I wrote. And I wrote a song called "Beautiful" that Bill Medley of the Righteous Brothers has on his new album that I wrote about my girls. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Art imitating life, life imitating art.
Well, that's for sure. Yeah.
Now, your book is I Wrote That One Too, A Life and Songwriting from Willie to Whitney. Now, the foreword on your book is beautiful.
Thank you.
And it was written by your son, Andrew.
Was.
He was also a successful songwriter, and he had an accident, I understand. I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Did that impact how you saw the book after it was written?
Yeah, it did. I wrote an afterwards in the book, as opposed to in the foreword, and that was. The truth is, 2016 was a year of loss for me. I lost my sister. I lost two very close friends. Alan Thicke passed away, the star of Growing Pains. He was a friend, and then the year ended with me losing Andrew, and I turned in the final draft of the book on February 15th of this year. So, yeah, it impacted. I went back and took another look at some of the stories I had told and changed a few things and softened a few things. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I know when you have a disruptive life event like that, you do kind of have to have a reevaluation, a rethinking, and especially something so permanent. So it's amazing that you continue to move forward with the book even in the face of such an avalanche of tragedy. And 2016 was a terrible year in terms of loss of musicians we loved.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah, and I when I learned about this part, that sort of part of the book, I was touched and amazed that you continue to push forward with what you were doing and really honoring your son in a special way. I just got to look at the afterword too. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Now you do your son Stever Dorff is an award-winning actor. Also, we've all seen him. We were actually talking about the new movie Leatherface a few minutes ago. What's it like watching Steven's success?
Well, he's been successful for a long time. He started acting when he was 10 or 11 years old, and started booking things right away. He was on Roseanne, he was on all these sitcoms, and then started doing films. And he's a very talented guy, and I don't like watching him die in movies, but which I've had to do many, many times, and talk about art imitating life.
That would be a little creepy.
Or life imitating art. Very proud of him. I'm very proud of Andrew. Andrew just had his 5th #1, a song he wrote for Rascal Flatts.
Wow.
Called Yours If You Want It. And it's like we said before, it's just kind of goes along with the territory. It's but when we talk about football and girls and and just about anything but show business, because it's family, and that's really what comes first.
Well, I'm excited to see what Steven comes out with next. I am a fan, and I can't wait to see Leatherface and his work in that. Now, you've had, like I said, you've had some amazing collaborators, and I want to get you on the record on something. Who's your favorite Beatle? What made the Beatles great was the fact that they were the Beatles, that it was John, Paul, George, and Ringo. Now, I did get to work with Ringo, but he's not my favorite. I loved working with him, and it was a very surreal and
pinch me kind of, moment when I got to write something for him and then produce the song, the record, and pushing the talkback button down and saying, "Hey, can you sing that again, Ringo?" is still kind of a surreal moment, because I was such a big fan of the Beatles, and I was one of these kids that ran to the record store, bought the record, locked myself in my room until I could play every note of every song on the record.
Ringo, first of all, I couldn't even wrap my head around having that sort of fan experience where you're a fan of the music, and then you're all of a sudden recording and have to give direction to someone who's one of your idols. That's
and he created. I mean, he was a member of a musical iconic group that created an entire industry of music, and it was crazy. The first time I sat at the piano and was playing him the song, and I heard that voice, I kept thinking Yellow Submarine, and I was hearing the same voice that I grew up with loving, and he's singing something that I wrote, and it was like a pinch me, is this really happening kind of moment.
I'm trying to wrap my head around that, what the equivalent of that would be in my own life, and I can't even think about what that would be. Did he put you at ease when you were first working? Did you have to put yourself at ease?
I mean, the funny story I tell is I was walking up to the studio. I was hoping to get there before everybody. Mm-hmm. And as I'm walking up the path to the studio, I see this guy smoking a cigarette, and my eyesight's not that great from a distance. So I'm walking closer, and I'm going, Jesus, that looks like Ringo, And I look at my watch, and I'm thinking, surely he's not the first one here. And as I get closer, I go, holy shit, that's Ringo. And what am I going to say? And all of a sudden, in my brain's going 100 miles an hour. Don't be an idiot. Don't say anything stupid. And be cool, mm-hmm. and try to act like you belong there in the same room with him, in the same airspace. So I walk up to him, and I reach my hand out, and I go, Ringo, and I start stammering, and I go, you probably hear this all the time, but you're the reason I got into the business. And he just looked at me, and he said, first time today. And that kind of broke the ice. And he was great.
What a wonderful sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
What a great story. Oh my gosh. Now, I told you before, and people know this who have listened to the show, I'm from Texas. I'm originally from a small town called Poteet, which was the birthplace of George Strait.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to tell you, my mother is a pianist and pipe organ, and I cannot tell you how many weddings that we've been to where my mother has had to play I Cross My Heart.
Right.
I called my mom this morning. I said, I was talking to you on the radio, and I said, he wrote I Cross My Heart. And she goes, oh yes, I Cross My Heart, because we've been to so many weddings. What's it like working with George Strait and all of the hits he's put out?
Oh, he's arguably the king of country music and one of the greatest of all time. I got real lucky. As a kid growing up in New York, I couldn't spell country music. I didn't see a tree until I was 14. So, played baseball on the street on cement. So, because a lot of people have asked me over the years, well, how'd you get into country music? And the truth be told, I think what makes country music is the arranging and the arrangement, the style of the musicians, the singer. I Cross My Heart was a song that Eric Kaz and I wrote 8 years before George even heard it.
Wow.
And Bette Midler recorded it first. And it was not a great record and never came out. And I played that song for just about everybody I knew for 8 years. And they all kind of looked at me and said, Steve, it's nice, not one of your best. So I called my mother because I knew she loved everything I did. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm coming over, I want to play you something. I came over, I played her I Crossed My Heart. She looked at me and she said, it's nice, it's not one of your best. So a couple of years later, I got to play it for the director of a movie called Pure Country, which I was hired to write the music to, the score. And he was looking for this love song for this specific spot. And we had gone through dozens of songs, and he wasn't happy with any of them. So I pulled this song out of the bag, and I said, look, I've read this script now 3 times, and this particular spot, I think I've got the perfect song already written. And he said, play it for me. And I did. And I was ready to hear him say, nice, not one of your best, but he loved it. He said, this is perfect. So we went down to Nashville. We played it for George and his producer, Tony Brown. And reluctantly, George did not love it at first. There was some pushback. It didn't really sound like a George Strait song compared to everything.
Like Boot Scoot Boogie or...
Yeah, no. There's a lot of chords. And the truth is that when Eric and I wrote it, we were thinking Boys to Men. We demoed it as kind of a pop song.
Ah, that makes sense.
And so to convert that into a George Strait country record took a little doing. And sure enough, he did it, and the movie came out, and the record sold 8 million copies, and that song was voted the number 9th greatest country love song ever written by CMT, Country Music Television. I didn't bother telling him that I didn't write it as a country song. I just wrote it. I just wrote a song.
Well, a great song is a great song.
Period.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's also amazing that you had the faith in the song. You didn't just kind of scrap it on the woodpile and say, well, maybe not my best. You persisted with it when you found an appropriate avenue for it.
Right, and that's really the story of my book. It's these songs. It takes time for them to find their homes. Some of them do, and some of them never do. And some of the best things I've ever written are still waiting their turn to be heard.
Well, I know Clint Eastwood is a very big fan of yours, saying that you are wildly talented and well-versed in every genre imaginable. What's it like working with Clint Eastwood, and what did you collaborate on with him? Well,
Clint gave me my start in movies, scoring movies. The great story there was that a big artist, one of the biggest artists on the planet, had written a song for a movie he was doing, and he didn't like it. And at the last minute, he threw it out, and he told the musical supervisor, I need a new song, and I need it real quick. And so I got a call from the musical supervisor, who was my publisher at the time, and he said, I need you to write a song called Every Which Way But Loose. I said, what does that mean? So I went home and called Milton Brown in Mobile, Alabama. I woke him up, and I said, Milton, have you ever heard of it's a Southern phrase, every which way but loose? He said, yeah, you turn me every which way but loose, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I said, we got to write it. He says, well, call me back tomorrow when I'm awake. I said, no, we got to do it right now, over the phone. And we did. We wrote the song in about 40 minutes over the phone. And I went in and played it the next day for the producer, and he called Clint, and he said, you got to hear this song. And we went over to the studio, and I met Clint and sat down at the piano and played him the song, and he said, play that again. I played it for a second time, and that was it. That was the song, and then he asked me if I'd ever scored a movie, and I thought real quick, don't say no. Even though I had, so I said, I sure would love to. That's why I came to California. And he said, good, you're going to score this one too. So that was my first foray into being at the right place at the right time and getting the right call and coming through with the right song.
I wish everyone could see my jaw right now. First of all, composing a song in 40 minutes over the phone in the middle of the night is just this epic story of artistry. I'm so amazed.
Yeah, it was crazy, But I've done that a lot because the nature of television and film is a hurry up and wait, last second. We need this yesterday,
right,
kind of business, as opposed to just sitting down with a collaborator and saying, hey, let's write a love song. And, and that could take a day, an hour, 2 weeks, however long it takes. But when someone calls you and says, I need a theme for a TV show and I need it yesterday, you got to go sit down and do it.
Well, you've been very successful at it, including scoring TV shows like Growing Pains, Murphy Brown, Murder, She Wrote, and Reba. Is there any medium that you find difficult writing songs for? Is there, or do you have a favorite? Do you enjoy one thing over another?
I think my favorite is writing theater songs.
Really?
Yeah, because there's no limitations. It's a much freer process. The songs are more dialogue. They're extensions of dialogue. They're character-driven songs. I love writing the theater songs, and but I also love scoring movies where there are no lyrics, where I don't have to think about what's this going to say. It just has to say it musically what I'm looking at on the screen. So if there's a helicopter chasing a car, and it's an action sequence, or whether it's a love scene, whatever that is, kind of filters through my brain and comes out musically.
It's interesting because when I work with screenwriting and screenwriters, sometimes you don't need the words. Sometimes the silence or the music just underscoring the actions is so much better, so much more impactful, so much more emotive than anything you could say. And I think that's the power of music, is that it transcends language, it transcends culture. And do you yourself have a favorite song of yours or of someone else's that you love? Do you have a pick-me-up song?
Well, I have so many. I have so many songs that I love. Not necessarily ones I've written, but just pieces of music that I love to listen to. And I don't listen to much music. I really don't. When I'm in the car, I'm listening to sports or news. I very rarely listen to music in the car.
Is there someone you'd like to work with, or someone you'd like to sing one of your songs that hasn't had the opportunity yet?
Yeah. Sure.
I'm sure there's a line of people out the door wanting to collaborate with you, but is there someone that you would like to hear?
There's so many great artists that, fortunately, I've written for a lot of them. So, someone that hasn't recorded one of my songs. Yeah, Rascal Flatts. I'd love to write something for them. They're great. I think Gary Lux is an amazing singer. I think he's got one of the best voices in country music. I'd love to work with... I can't think of her name now. I'll think of it. But there's so many artists. It's so hard to really... because after you've worked with voices like Celine and Streisand and Anne Murray and Kenny Rogers, and it's, it doesn't get much better than that.
Now, the first chapter of your book is actually titled Barbara Made Me Cry. We're talking about the Barbra Streisand.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So why did Barbara make you cry?
Well, she, I think there are levels of celebrity. There are levels of great artistry, and then there's Sinatra and Tony Bennett and Streisand and Elvis and the Beatles. They're kind of in a realm all their own. And so to get a Barbra Streisand to record one of my songs was just listening to it was, I felt like a blithering idiot, in the studio, tears running down my cheeks. But it took me back to the beginning. It took me back to all the rejection, took me back to all the knocking on doors, the disappointments. And all of a sudden, I'm hearing this 70-piece orchestra playing a song I wrote and Barbra Streisand singing it. And the fact that it just doesn't get better than that. It can't.
No.
And so yeah. And that's happened 3 times for me with her.
Now, even though you are a mega success, is there anything you would have done differently along the way?
Well, we all have those roads not taken,
right,
in our lives and in our careers. There are, I do sometimes think, well, what if I had done this that way, or what if I had moved to Nashville, or what if I had not taken 3 years off to write a musical that went nowhere. What could I have accomplished? But you know what? You can only take one road at a time, right?
Absolutely. And sometimes I think, and this is my personal belief, is that we're redirected towards our highest and best good. At least I like to think about that when I'm down or something's not working right. Now, I've heard that you have no plans to retire. Is there anything on your bucket list?
Yeah, I really want to score a James Bond movie. I'm a huge James Bond fanatic.
That would be awesome.
So, and I doubt it's ever going to happen because I know the politics. But if there's something on my bucket list, that would be at the top. And I wanted my show to. I've been working on several musicals and very close to getting one on Broadway, and so that's definitely something I want to accomplish.
Well, those are 2 amazing things, and I do hope you get to score James Bond. I hope someone's listening out there that can make that dream come true. I think that would be a really charming story. I want to focus really on the book. We've been talking around the book during our time here, and you've been giving us some of the anecdotes sort of from the book. And why did you write the book, and why now?
The book really represents something that I've been thinking about and living with my whole career. Everybody knows Elton and Lennon and McCartney and Billy Joel and Tom Petty,
right.
God rest his soul, and because they're the face of their songs. Guys like me are the Oz behind the curtain people that write these soundtracks of people's lives, and nobody knows who we are. And so when I started doing these evenings with Steve Dorff, where I sit at the piano and I tell the stories behind the songs, and then I play them, and I sing them quite poorly, not anything like Celine or George Strait or Kenny. What I've seen in the audiences and the feedback I get afterwards is, oh my God, I had no idea. I thought that was a Kenny Rogers song. Well, it is a Kenny Rogers song. He made it famous, but I wrote it. And
right, it's a Kenny Rogers song. It's not a Steve Dorff song.
People don't know that distinction. I would say 8 out of 10 people, just common people, do not realize that there are songwriters,
right,
that actually write these songs for big stars to record and make famous. And so that's kind of the arc of the book, and I was encouraged to write that, and a person who was a literary agent saw my show, and she came up to me afterwards and she said, "God, you got to write a book. Your stories are fun and they're funny and they're great." And I said, I can barely write a 4-minute song. How am I going to write a book? And she put me with Colette Friedman, who was a fabulous co-author and really helped shape the stories I wanted to tell. And lo and behold, we have this book that's already out. Really, it's in Amazon's starting to fill pre-orders. The official release date's November 1st.
Wow. Well, that's going to be coming up. I want to ask you, do you enjoy the performing? Did you ever, first of all, did you ever see yourself performing?
No.
And then you just...
It was never anything that, since I was thrown out of my high school band, that I ever really wanted to do. I really only wanted to write songs for other people. And I was encouraged, really, by a few friends, and actually Paul Williams, who's an incredible songwriter, said to me, "Steve, you really need to get out there and become the face of your music. Everybody knows your songs, but nobody has the slightest idea that you wrote them or who you are, other than within the music business." And then my son Andrew encouraged me to start doing some songwriter shows, and yeah, I really enjoy doing it now because there's no pressure,
So you're starting off in Atlanta with the book tour, and then you're... how do we follow you? How do we follow you on tour? Where do we find out the information?
It's all on my website, stevedorff.com, and the full itinerary up to now is on the news page of my website. And I'm going to 11 cities, I think, in 16 days. And then I'll break for Thanksgiving, and then I think I'm doing the Country Music Hall of Fame in Nashville, the Ford Theater there on December 9th, and then probably just take it easy for the holidays, and then hit it hard again after the first of the year.
Well, I know now what holiday gift I'm going to get for every music lover in my life. I actually have an early copy of I Wrote That One Too, A Life in Songwriting from Willie to Whitney, in my hand by Steve Dorff. Just thumbing through it, folks, for 5 minutes, I read something poignant. I saw some amazing behind-the-scenes photos. There's just so much in here for the music lover in your life, and I'm so happy, Steve, that you came on to share this with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is great.
I want to ask you just one last question before we wrap up here. I want to know, what advice would you give someone who's just starting off as a songwriter with big Hollywood and Nashville hopes and dreams? What would you tell them?
Probably two things. Be prepared to pick yourself up and dust yourself off about 100 times a week, because it's not easy. And then write what you know. Write about what's in your heart and what you really know, what you've experienced, because too many songwriters write songs about things that don't make, that's not, it's too personal. And there's a fine line between writing songs that are too personal and too impersonal. The trick of a hit song is to make that Alice and Bob in Des Moines, Iowa say, hey, we got to get married to that song. That's what makes it hit.
Well, that is sage advice. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Kristin.
We're so excited to have you, and next Wednesday, join us as we welcome Women for One founder Kelly McNellis. She's going to help us embrace our messy truths. Also, come to the conference this weekend. We're looking forward to seeing all of you. And thank you so much for listening, everyone, and have a wonderful night.
You're listening to What Women Want with Judy Goss, only on LA Talk Radio.